Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Season 3 of the Logical Christian Podcast. I'm your Logical Christian, Dan Irwin. The Logical Christian Podcast is not here to tell you what to think. It's an exercise in how to think. Rather than just accept what we're being told with regard to current events, politics, science, religion, and everything else, we're going to stop the spin, ask questions, dive deep, and look at the world logically. And since logic is a gift from God, most importantly, we're going to look at it all as Christians. Links can be found in the show notes if you'd like to follow along. So with that, let's go be logical Christians. Hey, there you are. I hope y'all, or all y'all, had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I, for one, was on a nice staycation for the week because, well, I've got vacation days that I just refuse to lose, so they needed to be used somewhere. And I stayed home all week. I was busy all week. I had a self-imposed list of things I wanted to get done, and you'll never believe this, but I failed to get them all done. In my defense, however, I did have some pretty big items on there that I was able to complete, and I made a substantial dent on the list, so I'm happy with that. Now the bad news. As I was pretty busy all week, as I just stated, I didn't really have a lot of time to focus on this podcast, so I had to make a choice. I could skip this episode, or I could do a shortened one, consisting of one typical segment and the rotating segment that was up for doing. And after consulting my creative team, my publishing house, my lawyer, after filing a harassment claim with HR, and getting the wise old janitor's opinion, I decided I'd drop a shortened episode. Oh, and by the way, all those people I just mentioned, yeah, they're all me. Remember the mega trend of the power of positive thinking? I don't know if that's still around these days or not. Probably, although maybe not to the same prominence as it once had. And that's too bad, because knowing that what you think about something is positively correct at all times, per your thoughts, is kind of nice. Now, full disclosure, I've never read, listened to, or watched The Power of Positive Thinking, and I have no idea what it may or may not contain or indoctrinate a person with. Just kind of making some assumptions here. That said, what we all know is that what we think is what's important. So on today's episode, first we'll think about tangled strings, and then we'll think about God's Word. So grab a cosmically oversized detangler brush and get your favorite Bible commentary off the shelf. Don't worry, we'll wait. Okay, got it? Good. Because I think it's time to Here We Go. Star Trek has been around now for nearly 60 years. Started in 1966. It's been pumping out TV episodes and movies ever since. Most people have heard that Star Trek has, through the years, predicted or prophesied or drove the creativity to develop a number of technological devices that we currently use. Some of them, practically all of the time. There are who knows how many websites that discuss this. I grabbed one, /gear.com, which listed a number, they claim all, it's a pretty bold claim, of the devices that Star Trek has predicted. Communicators, handheld wireless devices used to speak with other people over long distances. Something that can fit in a hand, in a pocket. Amazing. Tablet computers. Star Trek apparently had PADS, P-A-D-D-S, and I'm not a Star Trek person, a Trekkie, so I don't know what PAD stands for, and I really don't care that much to look it up. But what they were apparently handheld large-screen computer devices, much like every child is practically issued at about 3 years old today in order to shut them up on long trips. Next, voice-activated computers. Per the article, Star Trek The Next Generation had LCARS, which was apparently a computer system which responded to natural spoken language commands. And of course, over the last few years, especially with the development of AI, this has become quite a reality as well. Medical tricorders. These were little miracle devices that could scan and diagnose a person's illness or injury, as well as determine vital signs and perform blood tests and DNA analyses. Of course, today we don't have quite that powerful of a tool, at least not in one little handheld device, but we do have a number of medical devices of various sizes that can do all of those same sort of things. Most, maybe not all, but many of those functions. 3D printing replicators. Star Trek Voyager had a replicator that would allow the crew to create anything on demand, objects as well as food or clothing or pretty much whatever they wanted. Again, we're not quite at that level yet, but we can print 3D stuff out of plastic, metal, or concrete. We can do that with a large number of objects. We can also 3D print food, but that idea didn't go over so well when it was put in the news a few years back. Probably with good reason. Star Trek The Animated Series introduced the concept of a holodeck, a virtual reality interactive hologram. And of course, today we have virtual reality that can generally be accessed through some massive thing sitting on your face, which generally results in grandma running headlong into a wall or something. And we have at least some fairly good holographic technology in specific areas, which looks pretty realistic, some better than others. They list a few more things. Heads-up displays, something found in nearly every new car these days. It's found in airplanes and other places. Universal translators, which through the use of AI has become a reality in your handheld communicator. And the use of biometric identification, which of course is being pushed more and more for nearly everything. Fingerprints, iris scans, facial recognition, voice recognition, and who knows what's coming next. I know. We all know. It's the chip in the hand or the forehead, right? Right. TV shows and movies seem to be able to predict all sorts of things. The Simpsons, for example, seems to be able to predict every significant event in the realm of celebrity, polity, and society that will ever happen. But when it comes to advances in technology and science, the realm of science fiction seems to outpace reality by maybe a few decades. So the question is probably more along the lines of, does science fiction predict what's coming in the world of science? Or does science simply get their ideas from science fiction and then try to make what they see come true? Or I guess maybe one other possibility, is there a science mole? Someone who keeps leaking the next great thing to the sci-fi writers? I don't know. If I were to guess, I'd bet that the scientists get their idea from the writers. You know, a wireless handheld communication device, eh? I wonder. Well, as amazing as communicators and voice commands and tablets are, we got a couple articles for this segment that will make you plots. So I guess be near a bathroom when you listen to this, or at least be wearing some adult pull-ups. And, having taken a moment just to look it up, because I got curious, the definition of plots is actually, quote, be strongly affected with frustration, excitement, or other strong emotion. Not, well, you know. But still, the bathroom thing is always solid advice. Just keep that in your back pocket. Found on ICYMI.in, headline, Quantum Teleportation, the Next Frontier in Technology and Science. Now, I'm guessing that this is an Indian site, like from India, and I don't know how I started getting websites from India suggested to me, but I think it has something to do with me following the stranded astronauts on the International Space Station, likely because I clicked on an Indian article about Sunita Williams, because she's Indian. And if you want some funny headlines, I think India literally thinks that Boeing and the United States are trying to commit cosmic murder on poor Sunny. The headlines are fantastic. Loosely, very, very loosely based in any sort of fact, but hilariously fantastic. Anyway, that's a you-know-what. The article states that their source is the brighterside.news, and to be honest, that doesn't really help me at all. I don't know who they are either, but they mentioned it. I thought I would too. So as we've been discussing, the concept of being able to teleport has been exclusively a science fiction, and Willy Wonka also, staple. Some sort of beam that disassembles to the molecular or atomic or whatever level, beams us from here to over there, where it reassembles us perfectly, and we're none the wiser. And not just us, but also inorganic stuff, clothing, tools, weapons, etc. This is not a jump through time. Don't get those mixed up. We know from the various Terminator documentaries that time travel, sans a machine, requires complete nudity. And we know that time travel is just science fiction. Or is it? No, this is just a transference of people instantly from here to there, and as long as something doesn't screw up, also from there to back over here again eventually. Well, quote, over the past decade, groundbreaking studies in quantum mechanics have pushed the boundaries of teleportation from the realm of the theoretical physics to experimental application. Yeah, I'm not a theoretical physicist. I'm also not a quantum mechanic. I'm barely able to perform basic human functions most of the time, to be honest, but as we've discussed in the past, the entire idea of quantum mechanics and all that goes with it is, I kind of think it's a load of bunk. It's like someone threw out this quantum theory just as a lark, an April Fool's prank, if you will, and then it got some serious press, and then they were stuck, and now I'm sure it's quite lucrative to continue applying for grants about something that's a complete theory. So, why do we say we're close on this? Well, because of the claim that we can use quantum whatever to transport information instantly across large distances. As they explain, the theory behind the instantaneous transmission of information is due to something called quantum entanglement. Now, I'm not going to bore you with an in-depth explanation about what this is, because I can't, but basically it means that on the atomic level, like electrons and photons, not protons, photons, these things become interconnected to the point that no matter where the two are in the universe, no matter how distant, a change in one creates an instant change in the other, in theory. The claim is that this has been proven over tens or hundreds of kilometers in the past, and then in April 2022, Dr. Jianhui Pan, a physicist at the University of Science and Technology of China, said he was able to, quote, transmit quantum information over 1,200 kilometers via satellite. Now, Dr. Pan said, quote, we've demonstrated that quantum entanglement can be preserved over incredibly long distances using satellite-based links. This paves the way for global-scale quantum communication networks. And lest you scoff, this was published in a science journal, so it's got to be true, because, grant-reliant scientists at China and peer-reviewed scientific journals would never lie to the mouth-breathing populace like you and I, right? But it's over satellite technology. See, if it's over satellite technology, is it really entanglement? Because from the way they make quantum entanglement sound, it sounds like these electrons and photons kind of know what their entangled mate does regardless of distance without using other forms of technology. It's not quite what they're saying here, but again, this kind of sounds made up. Practical joke gone wrong. Bunk. Just saying. But let's trudge ahead, shall we? This is science, after all. Have some respect, people. Whew. So how do we teleport people, now that we absolutely know that we can entangle quantum things satellitically? We're not really at that point. Turns out matter, including you and I, are really nothing more than information. We're made up of electrons and photons and thus, so maybe this is theoretically possible. That's not really what they're talking about here. The article goes on to say that the key to this is the Chinese satellite Misius? I'm not really sure. It's Latin for better. This satellite allegedly creates entangled photon pairs. It keeps one to itself and it sends the other to Earth. The claim is that when a change is made to the photon on Earth, the one on the satellite instantaneously changes in the same way. So, see? Quantum science. All right, look, I'm sorry. Color me skeptical. I don't know that this is really actually doing what they say it's doing. But lest I taint your scientific curiosity, let me just quote the next paragraph and let you soak it in. Sans commentary from me, because, you'll know why in a second. Quote, in a complementary study published in Nature, researchers at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands achieved high-fidelity teleportation of quantum states between two network nodes without losing information, using nitrogen vacancy centers in diamonds to create and store quantum bits, or qubits. They demonstrated a teleportation accuracy rate of 90%. a record for terrestrial quantum networks. Okay, look, I need to say one thing. 90% accuracy. I mean, look, if I was transmitted with 90% accuracy, as long as it was the right 10% that was left somewhere in the quantum realm, I'd be fine with that. But it wouldn't be. It would be the wrong 10%. We all know that. Now, they were happy with 90% accuracy, and sure, I mean, that'll get you an A in school, but in the real world, 90% accuracy is 10% failure, and that's a pretty high failure rate. But as I said, they're happy with that, saying it proves this whole thing is possible. Now, they go into a long diatribe on noise in the transmission, some of which is good, some of which is not so good, all sorts of theoretical versions of entanglement, more Chinese researchers theorizing and publishing their theory in another journal about how maybe quantum teleportation could work across various dimensions, because as we know, if you stack up unprovable, untestable theoretical theories, they all work together to turn fantasy into reality, or something. I'm working on a theory about that, which I'll publish soon, theoretically. They go into a lot of, I think the scientific term is gobbledygook, about all sorts of quantum this and teleportation that, and different variations on the theory with other theories. And then they talk about the profound implications this could have on computers and digital security, and how various countries and organizations are investing millions of whatever currency they've got into the development of quantum computing, and that's definitely money well spent, and how quantum teleportation could lead to better quantum computing, and so on and so on. Now, before you run out to Best Buy and purchase the latest model of HP's quantum laptop or something, just know there are challenges. Like, for instance, did you even think about decoherence? No, you didn't, did you? You only think about yourself. Yeah, well, see, temperature fluctuations and electromagnetic interference can cause these entanglements to unentangle or disentangle or be tangled less, I don't know, over long distances, theoretically. But I can't imagine there being temperature or electromagnetic issues across vast distances in this universe of constant fluctuations, various environments, and ever-increasing electromagnetic signals. I mean, can you? They go into a few other issues, let you read on it yourself there, and then, as all of these types of articles do, they jump straight into the fairy tale land of, well, just think about what could be done if it was true. Now, this is the elevator pitch for more grant money, when you come right down to it. Quote, recent research from the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, suggests that teleportation could provide insights into the nature of space-time and black holes. Dr. John Preskill, a quantum physicist at Caltech, posits that quantum entanglement may hold clues to resolving the information paradox in black holes. These experiments are not just technological feats, said Dr. Preskill. They're also windows into some of the deepest questions about the universe. Well, if Dr. Preskill is excited about this. There's also speculation that eventually we could transport energy quantumly. But, quote, while the concept of beaming energy via quantum methods remains speculative, early studies indicate it may be possible to teleport energy states in specific conditions. Oh, that part is speculative, but only that, right? The rest, yeah, we cool. But that one thing, that's speculation. They wrap up this article with what this means for you and me. And really, isn't that what's really important? Me, and how things affect me, and how the world can work for me. Well, let me just lay out what this definitely means for you and me, possibly, if this could ever actually work, which none of it ever will. How about, quote, secure global communication, superpowered computing, and even new forms of energy transmission? So what about teleportation of people? You know, like on Star Trek, which is what this article, per the picture they put right up front, kind of implied was right on the horizon, especially knowing that we are all, as humans, just kind of bits of information, electrons, photons, and the like. Quote, teleportation may not yet be ready to transport people, but its potential to transform society is every bit as exciting as the science fiction dreams it once inspired. And is it? I mean, Are you excited? And maybe you are. I don't know. And if you are, you have a vastly different understanding of what they're claiming than I do. I don't read much about quantum mechanics, more than what I bring to this podcast for obvious reasons, but I still haven't read a single thing that convinces me, even in the least, that this is a legitimate field of study or a realistic possibility. To me, this is as much of a scientific researcher cash cow as the field of man-caused climate change, just with less potential for being real. And I think we all know how real I think man-caused climate change is. Okay, well, that was one article there. Kind of a bust. It's no medical tricorder or anything. We have one more possibility in the wings here for science fiction to become science fact. Now let me ask you this. What do hot tubs and nudity and phone booths, stainless steel sporting-looking cars with gutless engines, and old English police boxes, and sled-looking things with levers, what do they all have in common? Well, found on BGR.com headline, physicists think they may know the key to unlocking time travel. Well, it's about time. Pun, pun, pun. You know, those people who are asked, if you could go back in time, what would you change? And they say, nothing. Good and bad, I'd keep everything the same. Yeah, I don't like those people either. I'd change all sorts of things personally. If I could go back, and I'm sounding a little like Uncle Rico here, but yeah, if I could go back, I'd do a lot of things differently, knowing what I know now, of course, if I could go back. One caveat. Look, knowing that God is sovereign, although I may not like everything that's happened in my past, or current, or what'll happen in my future, there is literally no way that any change I could make would be better than God's plan for me, as God is perfect, sovereign, as I stated. Any change I make would be infinitely worse. But that's all theory, since there's no way to go back in time anyway. Or is there? Now look, I hear you, snickering, chortling, suppressing guffaws. Well, let me give you the opening paragraph verbatim to let you soak in this verbal genius. Quote, imagine a thread so thin it's invisible to the naked eye, but packed with the mass of thousands of stars. This isn't science fiction. It's the theoretical description of cosmic strings, structures that may hold answers to the universe's greatest mysteries. If confirmed, researchers believe these theoretical strings could unlock the key to time travel. What do you got to say now, smarty McScofferpants? You didn't even consider the supermass dense invisible star strings, did you? No, you didn't. We've been over this before. You only think about yourself. It's not a good personality trait. Just FYI. So can I just point out one thing? This is a science theory, right? There's no proof of these things, right? This is simply what someone thinks might exist out there somewhere, right? How is that not the definition of science fiction? I mean, sure, it's a scientific hypothesis, but so were handheld computers, which didn't really change from science fiction to technological fact until the theory was literally developed into something. So, yeah, this is literally science fiction. And that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with science fiction and hypothesis, a theory, kind of commingling. So these strings are both invisible and, per the next sentence, quote, if they exist, are thought to be incredibly slender, long tubes, either stretching infinitely or looping back on themselves. So, I would say that invisible to the naked eye is, in fact, very slender. Science fact, check. Apparently, these very slender tubes could have a mass of tens of thousands of stars. They'd theoretically gradually shrink over time and theoretically give off gravitational waves as they wiggle. Yeah, you heard me right here. Wiggling, radiating, shrinking, slender, heavy tubes. I mean... In fact, there may be two different kinds of these wiggling, invisible, slender string tubes. The first goes back to string theory, which from the little I've read on that, is as ridiculous as quantum theory. This is a theory that, quote, the universe's fundamental particles are vibrating strings. Superstrings could be stretched across the cosmos, providing clues about the fabric of reality and possibly holding the key to time travel. Now, these seem aptly named super, as they almost seem vital to our very existence the way they're described. I sure hope there aren't any cosmic scissors out there. The second string, quote, is believed to be a relic from the formation of the early universe. Scars, if you will, that were left behind during a cosmic phase transition. They would have formed like cracks that form as water freezes. We don't really care about these strings, although, and totally unplanned, the last article I was going to hit on in this segment, coming up, because it was Scientifically Crazy Town, which I thought was kind of unrelated to these first two, but I wanted to tell you about it anyway. Yeah, it's totally related. We'll get back to these icy crack strings shortly. So the last few paragraphs talk about these super strings, not the crack strings, and the study of so-called super strings as if they exist. Now, this is just nuts. Let me explain what these so-called scientists have shoveled us here. They theorized something, also known as making something up out of whole cloth. They decided on the parameters of these things, totally made up how they think they should work, and now they're analyzing what they've made up. They're analyzing and running theoretical experiments with experimental calculations and models based on something they totally made up. How do these guys get taken seriously? I mean, seriously. Quote, but spotting cosmic strings is no simple task, which is why they remain so elusively theoretical to this day. Their extreme density should bend space-time, producing a lensing effect that could cause a duplicate image of galaxies. However, recent findings suggest these strings might be lighter than previously thought. That would make them even harder to detect on a large scale. So did you catch that literary mastery? Elusively theoretical. Something that's theoretical isn't elusive. It doesn't exist. It's a theory until it's found. So look, example. The Loch Ness Monster is elusive. I don't think we can call it theoretical because we know that sea monsters of various stripes existed at one point. We know that water dinosaurs, for lack of a better term, existed. Now, was or is the Loch Ness Monster a hoax or a legitimate creature, a remnant of a water dinosaur? I don't know. If I were forced to make a call on this, I'd say that old Nessie was likely a smallish version of a water dinosaur, a remnant of the past. Since dinosaurs were created with man, and quite literally existed with man up to at least the Middle Ages in some places, as very small versions of the originals, they were known as dragons all around the world. Since the term dinosaur is a relatively new word, it wouldn't be shocking to have a few very specific versions in very specific locations continuing to exist to modern times. Now, I'm not sure if Nessie is still around or children of Nessie, but I have no problem saying that the Loch Ness Monster was probably real or is. Don't know. So all that to say this, the Loch Ness Monster is not a theory, but it is, or at least it was, or still is, elusive, right? Creatures like that did exist. We know that from fossil remains, but we can't or couldn't seem to find it. Now, these cosmic strings are fantasy because we have no proof that they exist. We've never seen one. It's complete theory. So they're not elusive. They're fictional. They're fairy tales until someone proves that they exist. And that's why they have to change their theory to say, maybe they're not supermassively heavy. They're somewhat less heavy than that. Because we can't find any evidence of our first science fiction theory, quote, which is why some astrophysicists have proposed an alternative approach, observing microlensing in individual stars, where a passing string might temporarily double a star's brightness, giving us a clue as to how to find the elusive keys to unlocking paradox-free time travel. So they may be literally anything, anywhere, and may do a variety of things, which we'll keep theorizing until we find something doing something out there that we can kind of glom onto and claim as evidence of cosmic superstrings. But, and this is the crux, how could these strings allow for time travel? Well, quote, theorist J. Richard Gott discovered that two cosmic strings moving close to light speed could theoretically form a loop in space-time, acting as a wormhole of sorts, which could be the key we need to unlock time travel. A lot of qualifiers in there. Now, Mr. Gott discovered nothing. He said he discovered, but he discovered nothing. Yet another word used incorrectly. He theorized something about two somethings that have never been seen, have never been analyzed, and exist completely in science fiction. The something he theorized was also science fiction, because as much as we know nothing about this fantasy cosmic string tube, we know at least double that amount of nothing about two of them, moving fast next to each other. Now, I don't know what God is getting paid, but I've watched a lot of science fiction. I've got a fairly creative mind. I think I'm in the wrong profession. I mean, you're telling me that all I need to do is be a nerd, check, an outcast of society, check, and make something up based on something else that's made up. And then I can get published and quoted and paid? I bet I could work from home in my comfy pants and do that. But what about these crack strings? Well, again, seriously, being totally honest here, without knowing it, quote, a team of astrophysicists says they may have found evidence for cosmic strings, long hypothesized cracks in the universe left over from early in its expansion. Found on IFLscience.com headline, astronomers may have found cracks in the universe after looking closer at suspicious galaxies. So I've mentioned this before. I find a lot of headlines that I save that I can potentially use later. I found this one a week or so back, and I wanted to use it somewhere because this is great, but I wasn't really sure where, and it really wasn't something to use on its own. It's a fairly short article. And then these science fiction headlines popped up, teleportation and time travel, and I thought, well, this is science and also fiction, these cracks here, so let's throw it in this segment. Now, generally speaking, I don't really read the entire articles before I start writing a manuscript for a segment. I kind of scan them, get an idea, make sure it looks usable, and then I'll just kind of take it wherever it leads. But I had no idea that the time travel article would be talking about the crack strings spoken of in this article. So this is great. God's providence, my friends. So this article gives us a little better idea of what slender invisible tubes means. They say thinner than a proton. It's pretty thin. It's nearly as thin as the skin of most of these woke leftists that are out here having a meltdown in their car or gathering as a group to scream at the sky. So these crack strings, quote, are proposed to have sprung into existence in the very first second of the universe and could potentially stretch right across it. Of course, this is complete bunk to an entire faction of theoretical evolutionary scientists who believe the Big Bang never happened. Right? Theory built upon theory, and it's theories the entire way down. Look, I got a better theory, which I'll talk about soon. I've got documentation for my theory. Anyway, as with the superstrings, these crack strings also have never been seen. Quote, though there were a few ideas on how we might rediscover them. When strings cross, for instance, it could provide us an opportunity to find them. And so hold up here, rediscover. It's an interesting word they use there. When the King James Version of the Bible was written, at the time of Jesus, using a re at the beginning of a word could mean to do the thing or to do the thing again. So in Genesis, Adam and Eve are told to replenish the earth. But at that time of the writing of the King James Version, that could mean to fill the earth or to fill it again. In the case of Genesis, it meant to fill, as it was just formed. The earth was just formed. But in today's English, rediscover means to discover again. But to discover again, it would mean that it would have had to have been discovered in the past by someone, right? And it wasn't. So this word was possibly used by mistake, or it was used purposefully to help this theory look more realistic, more plausible, which it's not. But let's continue. Quote, once formed, a loop is doomed. The LIGO, L-I-G-O, scientific collaboration explains it oscillates, radiates gravitationally, shrinks, and eventually evaporates. Strong gravitational emission occurs at the pinch-off points of the loop, the cusps, which move with a velocity close to the speed of light. Powerful bursts of gravitational waves are expected to be produced by cosmic string cusps. Let me reiterate. None of this has ever been seen or tested or measured. Nothing This is not science. He's not doing science. They're not doing science. They're living inside a fairy tale while writing the fairy tale. It's a master's class in insanity. But let me regain my composure a little bit. There is literally another way to detect the undetectable string cracks. The Big Bang, theoretically, gave off a lot of theoretical radiation when it banged bigly, and some of that theoretical radiation is still theoretically hanging around and theoretically permeates the entire universe. So they could be seen in that. Theoretically. Somehow. I'm not sure how. They don't explain. I think, although, like I said, they don't connect this, it's because they're incredibly dense, these strings, not the scientists, the strings, and we've discussed their density, the scientists and the strings, but we're talking about the strings here. And these dense strings could cause gravitational lensing, which warps space-time, except this has never been and isn't currently seen anywhere, which is why those other fiction authors have speculated that they're not as dense and heavy as the theory theoretically theorized previously. That's, of course, if they do exist at all. That's a quote, if they do exist. Now, lest we become totally jaded, rather than just mostly jaded, this team has identified 2 galaxies that they feel are the best candidates for gravitational lensing that they should really tell the others about, because they said that it's never been seen, so they're changing the theory because they've never seen it. But these guys might have seen it. Now, but these 2 galaxies, which have the oh-so-catchy name of SDSSJ 110429-A or -B, these could be not 2, but 1 galaxy, but appearing as 2 because of gravitational lensing, because of cosmic strings. Yeah, these allegedly 2 galaxies, these have similar, not identical, as one would expect with this lensing thing, but similar spectra. And if they modify their cracked string model, they can theorize that this galaxy pair is in fact 1 galaxy, more or less. Quote, while interesting and worthy of further observations, the team is, of course, cautious. Perhaps the galaxies have similar properties from being birthed in close proximity, or there is an unusual gravitational lens to blame. Given that cosmic strings have previously not been detected, the team would like to observe further potential evidence using more powerful telescopes. Yeah. If you'd like to read this study in full, it's published in Bulletin de la Société Royale des Sciences de Liège. And no, to answer your question, I am not a native French speaker, just 2 years of high school French where I definitely put in the hard work day in and day out, in order to... Is it getting hot in here? Anyway, do I need to really go through the whole thing again? The thing. Look, read Genesis chapter 1 through 11, okay? It won't take that long. Start with 1 and 2. Good place to start. Genesis, not a science book. Okay, Bible, not a science book. But Genesis has the documented history of creation. So look, could quantum entanglement exist? I don't know. Maybe? I'm not going to put a limit on God's creation, but personally, it seems kind of like theoretical nonsense to me. Do cosmic strings exist? No. I mean, look, something thinner than a proton with the mass of tens of thousands of stars, no. This is Big Bang insanity level here. The reason these things haven't been seen is because they only exist in the mind of those who get their paychecks from coming up with anything at all to try to prove evolutionary theory. These are just ridiculous ideas. Now, do these scientists, so-called, know that they're living on Fantasy Island? Not the good Fantasy Island like on TV, just their own scientific nerd Fantasy Island. I don't know. Maybe some of them do. Others are probably quite genuine in their belief, which is kind of sad, to be honest. I have no doubt that there are infinite wonders that exist in the universe. I believe that one day we will be able to discover and explore them. Explore them all, probably. I believe that there are amazing things at the atomic level, or smaller, in God's vast, unfathomable creation. And one day, we'll be able to discover those as well. And maybe some of these theories will actually, to some degree, be proven true, at least to some degree. But as of right now, as King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 7, And no, I didn't just pull this one out of my memory bank somewhere. I know this one because I literally just read this today. See the work of God, for who is able to straighten what he has bent? See the work of God. Well, that could occupy scientists for the rest of time, just to see the works of God and try to understand God's thoughts after him. Why did God do what he did? How did he do what he did? Why would he put all of these things, all of these places? Elon Musk wants to get us to Mars before man destroys the Earth. Well, what if he and all these various rovers they send up there wanted to go to Mars to, 1, get more candy bars, and 2, investigate how God made the planet and why God made that planet? The world of science, so-called, is so focused on trying to prove the non-existence of God, they've literally gone insane. No theory is too outlandish. No hypothesis is too crazy. No theory built on a theory built on a theory is too fanciful. Anything at all, just to prove that God doesn't exist. Now, I know that we're supposed to look for all these signs of God's returning. Depending on your eschatology, you may or may not believe all of these sign things or care about alleged signs. I'm probably more of the latter. I don't think all the supposed signs are literal. I don't particularly care about all the supposed signs. I know that God is coming back at some point. I know that my job as a Christian is my job regardless. That said, I think we're seeing an increase in just insanity. Politics, entertainment, media, even religion is becoming overrun with people whose minds, they just seem fried at this point, don't they? Broken? And to me, more than anything, I'd look at that for absolutely no biblical reason at all, except for Jesus saying that in the realm of faith that even the elect, if it were possible, would be deceived. But I kind of look at that as being a sign of the end of time. I mean, when the world is full of evil insanity, how long could we continue on? But that's just my own personal theoretical theorized theory. Okay, let's be Bereans. But first,
What you're about to hear, the thoughts, questions, revelations, not like them wackadoodle charismatic types, the host of the Logical Christian Podcast. This guy, as hard as it may be to believe, well, sir, he ain't perfect. Never claimed to be as such, but he sure do try mighty hard to get things right. That said, if he does get something wrong, which may happen once in a coon's age, ain't you here being a brilliant? Ain't you supposed to catch you in mistakes? And for good measure, you need to tell on, keep him from getting too big for his britches. And alright, y'all been warned. Keep your ears open. That's all I got to say about that.
all right, now that that's out of the way, for legal purposes and such, probably, let's take a look at some of what I've, read in the Bible. I've been moving fairly slowly through the Bible, but wow, am I pulling away like a rocket from this Let's Be Bereans segment. So, to catch up, let's settle in and do about 6 straight hours of nothing but Bereaning. Nah, on second thought, let's not do that. We'll keep working on this little by little until we stop for whatever reason. So where are we here? Okay. We had just finished up Deuteronomy 18 in the last Let's Be Berean segment. It's a warning about and against false prophets. So heading into chapter 19, we find cities of refuge. There were 3 cities where someone guilty of manslaughter, and remember, you can't spell slaughter without laughter. Manslaughter, not murder, not premeditated or malicious. This is generally accidental. Now, these cities were places where people could run to for safety from someone trying to enact revenge on them for the accidental death of their loved one, their friend, their whatever. Now, this actually protected not only the person who accidentally killed someone, it protected the person wanting to take revenge from now committing premeditated murder, which was a crime that deserved death. Now, we also learn that if the Israelites actually did what God told them following his law and claiming all of the promised land, they would have had to have added 3 more cities of refuge to the initial 3. Don't worry, though, they didn't have to do that. Chapter 19 also talks about not moving someone else's boundary markers, because that's theft. And we find out that accusations need 2 or 3 witnesses, and if a witness lies, that lying witness will have done to him what the accused would have had done for the alleged crime. Boy, wouldn't that be an interesting concept to bring into our judicial system? That's what we should do, to be honest. And chapter 19 ends with the concept of purging evil from the camp. And again, to be honest, this is something that would be very handy today. Now, I mean, sure, there would be questions about where to draw the line regarding evil, especially since we are not and don't need to be a theocracy, but we should mostly all agree that things like murdering babies is evil, right? Mutilating children is evil. Unfortunately, we don't agree on those things, and the list is long of what we should agree on, but we really don't. But we could start with a few of the easy ones, cleanse the camp, and then kind of go from there. Now, moving into chapter 20, Moses is speaking about the military and war, and it's interesting the number of exceptions or exemptions to the mandate that men must serve in the military, and then the process for when battle is imminent. So, first, Moses is very clear. The people, the army, should have no fear of any other army, no matter how strong or how well equipped or how large they are, because they have, something the other nations don't. They have God, Yahweh, on their side. And to illustrate the point, Moses leaves the edict with the military commanders, the officers, that if any man had built a house and not yet dedicated it, well, they're exempt from going to battle. If a man planted a vineyard and hasn't been able to reap from it yet, well, he's exempt. If a man is engaged but not yet married, he's exempt. And finally, as a catch-all, the officers are told to ask if there's anyone who's scared. Just afraid to go to battle. And if there are, they can go home too. No problem. Now, we see the same kind of idea specifically illustrated with Gideon and his army being chopped and sliced down to just a handful of men because God wanted it to be clear that Gideon and the Israelites didn't win their battle in their own strength. It was God. It was all God. God really doesn't need one officer or enlisted or anyone or anything else to win these battles. I mean, he's the owner and ruler of all. He's got absolute rights to do with man as he pleases, all for his glory. And that's a very important phrase to use, for his glory, right? For those who think a sovereign God would be a wicked God, creating man, knowing their eternal destination is hell, but creating them anyway, or that he's nothing but a puppet master. Well, riddle me this. How would God, acting wickedly, bring him glory? And if God doesn't glorify himself in all that he does, then he's not God. See, everything and everyone glorifies something or someone. Ultimately, God is the recipient of all glory. But if he doesn't glorify himself in what he does, whoever he's glorifying, that entity is actually God, since he or it stands above God to receive that glory. Now, this is why the idea that we choose salvation of our own free will is so dangerous, because at least to some degree, we glorify ourselves through our correct decision-making. An all-sovereign God must necessarily include the doctrine of God's sovereign election, or as most people know it today, Calvinism. If you try to believe one without the other, you've just got a jumbled, mixed-up theological belief system. Just saying. Anyway, back to war. Once everyone with something going on and knocking knees and hang nails or whatever else has gone home as the army approaches a city to besiege it, their first military act is to call for terms of peace. Now, these terms are not mutually beneficial. The people of the city would become slaves of the Israelites. But as compared to death and destruction, knowing that God also has rules for how to treat those who were put into forced labor, that might actually be a better option than being killed, right? If the city doesn't surrender, however, then the Israelites are to besiege it, slaughtering the men, keeping the women and children for themselves, and plundering the city. That's at least for most cities. There were a few specific ones where God mandated that everything that breathes, man, woman, child, animal, all of it, slaughtered. Everything slaughtered and burn it to the ground. Now, to most of us, that sounds unbelievable. I mean, the news is currently making their money on splashing the headlines everywhere, and this one I just saw today, that Israel launched an attack and 6 people died, including 2 children. And we're all supposed to hiss and spit at Israel because of how mean they are. Just boo and, just tweet storm them back to the Stone Age because of just how horrible they are. But the reality is that God, and you might find this next statement shocking, knows what he's doing. And what we'll see as we wander through the Old Testament is that the fact that the Israelites did not slaughter absolutely everything of these specific nations or people groups, and it came back to bite them over and over and over again. Now, I have been an advocate for a long time of the complete annihilation of, say, terrorist groups. Like, take Hamas. They're in the news lately. If I were making the call, I would have every man, woman, and child slaughtered. By not doing that, you just leave people who hate you even more now alive to plot and fight another day. Do we want to see women and children dead on the battlefield? No. As a general rule, no, we don't. But to stop that particular evil from existing in the world, honestly, it's a relatively small price to pay. I know it's not a popular opinion. Shockingly, I'm okay with that. All right, let's continue on. Chapter 21, just a few things of specific note, at least in the format we're in here currently. First, Moses makes mention of the fact that if a family has a rebellious son, and this applies to an adult son, not a naughty child, that he should be brought outside the camp and stoned to death. Quote, "So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel will hear of it and fear." It was very important to immediately, visibly, publicly remove the evil forces from the camp. Again, we could learn from this. I'm a big proponent of large gallows in the middle of every city with continuous live streams and public hangings of those convicted of specific crimes that result in the immediate execution of the death penalty. And sure, we could have a single appeal or whatever, I don't know. But if someone who is found guilty of a death penalty type of crime and they're not executed publicly for the entire world to see within a year of that conviction, well, we're doing something very, very wrong. Now, you want a deterrent to crime? That would deter crime. The Muslims, with their hijacking of the Old Testament laws in large part, have a system that instills fear of breaking the law. Doing this in a way that honors God is the hard part, but what we know doesn't work is our current system. The idea that we can reform criminals is misguided at best, and keeping people on death row for multiple decades or in prison for life is absolute insanity on our part for a whole host of reasons that I'm not going to go into here. Okay, the other thing of note in chapter 21, at least from what I'm looking at, is that Moses makes it clear that a man hanged on a tree must be cut down and buried on the same day. Quote, "Because cursed of God is he who is hanged on a tree." Now, I just mention this because this has some prophetic tie to Jesus and his being on the cross for only a few hours before he gave up the Spirit. Chapter 22 has a few interesting things to discuss, so let's do that. Let's discuss. Verse 5 has some very interesting verbiage. For example, sages throughout all of time have strived or striven, strivened to decipher the obviously contextually coded language. I will read this from the LSB version and let you try to noodle out what this may mean for you personally, as that's always the best way to read the Bible from what I understand. How do I read this personally? Quote, "A woman shall not wear man's clothing, nor shall a man put on a woman's clothing, for whoever does these things is an abomination to Yahweh your God." Yeah, obviously I jest. I mean, how much clearer does the Bible need to be about the idea of transgenderism? It's an abomination. And some may say that transgender individuals aren't just putting on clothing, they're actually changing to the other gender, and then they're wearing the appropriate clothes, and so everything's good. And to that I say, how daft are you? Did your parents have any children that lived? You, at the bare minimum, cannot transition a gender. Scientifically, bare minimum, you can't transition a gender. It's literally impossible. You can cut things off, and you can add things on. You can pump in these hormones and block those hormones. You can do anything and everything you want, But your gender is written on your DNA and in your chromosomes, and those can't be changed. And never will be able to be changed. Just mark my words on that. Science, medical science, whatever you want to call it, those will never be able to change those. So no matter what you do, no matter the so-called advancements in medical science or medical butchery, if your gender, your birth gender, your gender assigned at birth, or whatever else you want to call it, does not match with the clothes you're wearing, well, this verse describes you. Thankfully, from what I can tell, from what I'm reading, it appears at least that the scales are slowly falling from the eyes of even the unsaved world with regard to transgenderism. They're starting to see and feel the pain of capitulating to this insanity that we must simply affirm all people in their mental and spiritual derangement and perversion. Maybe this trans abomination will be shoved back deep into the closet soon, where it belongs. Okay. But after that verse is a saying in verses 6 and 7 that is literally, from what I can tell, impossible to interpret. Quote, "If you happen to come upon a bird's nest along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, and the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall certainly let the mother go, but the young you may take for yourself, in order that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days." Now, what on earth does this mean? And from looking at a number of commentaries on Bible Hub, I can unequivocally say, I don't think anybody knows. Jewish tradition has some mystical beliefs about this, and then they have some made-up mumbo-jumbo about what it means. And they've, of course, tacked all sorts of other little caveats on it. You know, if the mother bird is landing on the nest, but the wings haven't touched the nest yet, well, then, you know, she's still fair game, right? But if her wingtips touch the nest, then she's supposed to be left alone, then this verse applies, and so on and so on. And then other commentaries say it has to do with the fifth commandment, with treating parents with respect, and, then your days will be long or something. I don't know. And then others say that it has to do with being kind to animals, although I don't know if you're stealing their children. I don't know how kind that is. Or maybe it's about ensuring the propagation of the species. I don't know how if you're eating the babies. And my favorite is that in the region are all sorts of poisonous snakes. This is what we're being told. And the birds would eat the snakes. So Moses was telling them to leave the mama bird alone so she could eat the snakes and save humanity. So what does this actually mean? No clue. The MacArthur Study Bible says that this was Israel being commanded not to destroy their food source. The mother bird would be a source of eggs for food. But if you eat her, that source is gone. And that's ridiculous. Now, don't tell MacArthur I said that. I'm still afraid of that old man. Because that literally works if taken to its absurd end for one generation of birds. Then that entire source of food is gone because no eggs, and now no mother bird because she died of natural causes. And so bottom line, I don't know that anyone knows for certain what or how this phrase, nobody knows what this means. Then 3 more times through chapter 22, we find orders to immediately purge the evil from among you for various acts. It's almost like that was kind of an important point that should be taken seriously. Nah, never mind. That's silly. Okay, chapter 23 deals with a lot of rules and regulations about who can and can't enter the assembly of the Lord. Now, I looked up that phrase. What does the assembly of the Lord actually mean? There are various theories, but it does seem that the consensus is that it's kind of what I assumed it to be, basically worshiping in the temple, give or take. So there are a number of restrictions as to who can't enter the assembly, and per today's standards, we call this non-inclusive or restrictive or discriminatory or maybe downright mean. And yeah, look, today, in the New Covenant, these restrictions may no longer exist. But what we should take away from this is the concept that's presented. Our God is a thrice holy God, right? Perfectly righteous. Our worship of him should be done with that in mind. This is why the church we attend and the way we attend is important. It's important to attend church, yes, in itself, yes. But it's equally, maybe more important, the type of church we attend. And I'm not necessarily speaking of denomination, although we need to be really careful of denomination and then what type of that denomination as well. But if we're attending a 3-ring, big-top, silly circus type of church that's focused on simply entertaining the masses, if we're attending a church that gives great TED Talk advice, but no real true truth, if we're attending a social gospel church which sees its mission as one of ensuring the church doctrine matches the degeneracy and perversion of the world, if we're attending a church that takes a low view of God in the preaching or in the song selection, basically, if we're attending a church that doesn't take their job seriously, like eternally, biblically seriously, what are they and what are we by attending saying about how we view God? And most importantly, how does God view our so-called worship of him by what we're doing? And we may think we have the who we're worshiping correct, but the what, the why, and the how are all vital components as to who it is we're really worshiping. Chapter 23 wraps up with a variety of rules and laws. I'm not going to cover them here, except for one that I think would again be extremely helpful to follow. Verses 21 to 24 say this, quote, "When you make a vow to Yahweh your God, you shall not delay to pay it, for Yahweh your God will surely require it of you, and it will be a sin in you. However, if you refrain from vowing, it will not be a sin in you. You shall be careful and do what goes out from your lips, just as you have voluntarily vowed to Yahweh your God that which you spoke with your mouth." How many times have we been in a valley, a low point in our lives, a crisis, and said to God, "Oh, if you get me out of this one, I promise I'll," and then fill in the blank with generally the thing that you should or shouldn't be doing anyway, right? Well, I'll pray more. I'll go to church regularly. I'll stop sinning that little persistent pet sin that I just like so much. I'll give an offering from my income or whatever, right? And maybe that holds true for a little while, possibly even a few weeks, and then back to the same old thing. Now, did God get you out of your predicament because of your promise? No. Was he shocked and hurt when you didn't fulfill your promise? No. And that's the rub, right? Why in the world would we promise God anything? We don't have the ability to uphold that promise. Regardless of our intentions, which may be pure and good, we simply can't do it, whatever that it is. All we've done by making the promise is heap more sin upon ourselves. And yes, the sin is paid for through Christ's death and resurrection, but that's sin that didn't need to be there, right? Now, how many times have we made a promise to someone else and failed to fulfill that? How many times have we sworn about something, possibly even swearing to God or swearing on a relative's grave or even the big one, crossing your heart, hoping to die, sticking a needle directly into your eye? Well, verse 22, right? Quote, "If you refrain from vowing, it will not be a sin in you." You know, years ago, I decided that in general, I was not going to promise much of anything anymore. I had been burned a number of times by promising that we would do this, or we would go there, or we would buy that. And then when circumstances made the fulfilling of that promise impossible, I was left with egg on my face and angry people looking at me because I didn't keep my promise. So for probably 20 years or more now, I have made close to zero promises to anyone. Now, I'll try my best. I'll state my intentions clearly. I'll affirm whatever plans we've got as long as circumstances don't change, but I very, very rarely promise anything. And that's not me being wishy-washy or fickle. It's because if you refrain from vowing, it will not be a sin in you. And who am I to promise things, generally speaking? I know that there are vows that we do need to take. There are vows before God. There are business agreements, etc., etc. But in our day-to-day lives, who are we to claim to have the ability to fulfill a promise? We have no idea what God has for us in the next year or month, day, second. This is why we're told to just let our yes be yes. There's no need to vow or swear. Just answer and then do or don't do what you said you would. I think a lot more people would do well to be careful and do what goes out from their lips. And don't just say things. Think about what you're going to say. Think about the implications of what you're going to say. Don't open your mouth until you've let the words, the thoughts rattle around inside that brain case for a little while first. And with that, I guess my word usage should probably cease as well. So, as always, let me know what you think. Give me feedback, ask questions, tell me what you're learning, tell me where I'm right, tell me where I'm wrong. And now, as always, get up, get off your duff, and go be a Berean. And with that, sadly, we've reached the end of yet another episode of the Logical Christian Podcast. I feel we've bonded as we've laughed and cried and twisted our faces in incredulity. If you've enjoyed or found value in what you've heard, go on and do all the podcast things, and don't forget to check the show notes for links and contact info. Lawrence J. Peters said, "Against logic there is no armor like ignorance." Jesus told us that if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So stay in the word, stay logical, stay faithful, and until next time, God bless.